So we are holding on Daf Ches Amud Beis. We are going to be starting again from the Mishnah, and we are hopefully going to plow through the Gemara and the Mishnah, which talks all about the Metzora, which is the leper, the one who has received tzaras, and we're going to mix in discussion about the Zav again that we mentioned again, the person who receives has a discharge, and the laws regarding to him. We're going to mention that again, and then Be'ezus Hashem, once we get through that, we will move forward from the discussion about Metzora and Tum Tahara. But I need to ask everybody to please buckle your seatbelts and get ready to go through this Gemara. There are a lot of psukim and a lot of drushes that need to be understood. Okay, so we're going to be speaking about two types of Metzora, two types of lepers. One is somebody who is a confirmed Metzora, which means to say, when he was inspected by the Kohen determined that all the criteria that are needed to be able to become a Metzora are in place, and therefore he becomes a Metzora. And therefore, there are certain things that the Torah says applies to him, and all those things need to be followed. All the procedures, etc., need to be followed. However, there's another type of Metzora, and that is the Metzora that is called a Metzora Musgar, which means that he's confined, which means to say there's different ways to understand what it means to be confined, whether he's confined in a house or whether what happens is that the Kohen comes along and makes a mark around the appearance of the tzaras to see whether it grows or not. But whatever it means, the bottom line is he's not a confirmed Metzora. And so our Mishnah proceeds to tell us that there's no difference in terms of what applies to the Metzora Muchlat and the Metzora Muskar, apart from the things that it states as the exceptions. So let's do that inside. Says the Heilige Mishnah. Mishnah says as follows: Ein bein Metzora Muskar le Metzora Muchlat. There's no difference between a confined Metzora and a confirmed Metzora. Ella priya ufrima, except with regards to letting his hair grow and ripping his garments. That is something that is done only by the Metzora that has been confirmed by the Kohen to be tamei, to have tzaras, but the other one does not. But as the Gemara will go on to say, with regards to everything else, there's no difference. Then we say, with regards to him coming out, when he enters into a state of purity, because the Kohen declares him pure upon inspection. So we say, Ein bein tahor mitoich hesger letar mitoich hechlet. There's no difference between one who becomes tar from a state of confinement and one who becomes tar from a state of confirmation, meaning he's completely a Metzora. There's no difference between the process of becoming tar, except for Ela tiglachas v'tziporim, except the requirements of shaving your hair, that the one who is a Metzora, at the end of the process of the purification, he has to shave his hair. And at the end of his purification, he needs to bring up these birds as an offering, right? Whereas the one who's only been confined, right, until it was determined whether he's tar or not, right? For him, he will not have to, if it's determined at the end that he's not tahar, that he's not tamei, because it's not tzaras, then he will not have to shave his hair, and he will not have to bring up these birds. Okay, so that is the Mishnah. So now we're going to continue with the Gemara. We're on Daf Ches Amud Beis. If you're following along in the art scroll, it's 8b2, and we're going to say as follows: when we said that there's no difference between the Mitzvah that is confined, and the Mitzvah that is confirmed, right? Apart from not having to let your hair grow and render your garment, but with regards to sending the Mitzvah out of the city walls and all the stringencies of Tumah that apply to a Mitzvah, that both of them are identical. Both of them are identical. Okay, now, before we go any further, let me just see if I have this. I don't know what's going on over here. This is because I got my new computer, so therefore I'm not able to share until I fix all of this. And why is that? Hello. Okay. Oh, I have to click this. I'm sorry. Just give me one moment. Hopefully I'll be able to. Okay. Okay, I'm not going to be able to share it. Forget it. I'm not going to be able to share it this time. I'll be able to share next time. Sorry about that. But I'll just tell you like this: that there are many psukim that we need to look at, and we're just going to have to do it by memory. Okay, we're going to have to do it without looking inside. I can't share, unfortunately. Okay, so let's go over here. With regards to sending out of the city, right? It seems that just like the Mitzorah, who's a confirmed Mitzorah, has to go out of the city, right? Because he has been declared a confirmed Mitzorah, so too, the one who is confined, he, for the duration of his confinement, has to go out of the city walls, right? Likewise, with regards to all the stringencies of Tumah, right, and conveying Tumah, we say that the one who has been confined, because it hasn't yet been determined during that period, he conveys the same level of Tumah to everyone else. Okay. So now the question of the Gemara is, from where do we know this? In other words, from where do we know that the Mitzorah who is not yet confirmed as a Mitzorah, he does not have to also allow his hair to grow and rip his garments? So Rabbi Shmuel bar Yitzchok kamed Rav Huna. Rav Shmuel bar Yitzchok taught in front of Rav Huna the following brisa. Then it says as follows: there's a pasuk. We're going to try and use this pasuk and the precise language of the pasuk to teach me that there is going to be a difference between a confirmed Mitzorah and an unconfirmed Mitzorah. It says in the pasuk, with regards to a confined Mitzorah who's becoming cleansed, which means to say, if you would look into the psukim, you'd see over there that it talks about the kohen coming back to check to see whether the lesion had grown or any other simonim that would actually confirm the tsaras, and he finds that it hasn't grown and none of the other criteria were added, and he therefore determines that this person is tahor. It says in that pasuk over there, the tiaroi hakoyen, then the kohen shall declare him tahor. Then it says mispachasi. It's just a mispachas, which is like a stain. It's just something to do with his body, but nothing to do with tsaras. It's not going to be the Torah kind of tsaras. And therefore, what should he do? It says v'chimis begodav. He shall immerse his garments v'toher, and he has been cleansed. Now v'toher is written in such a way that it could be understood in two ways. It could either be understood in past tense, which means he has been cleansed, that in some manner he has always been tahor, or it can be understood as, present, that now he's being cleansed, right? So because it could have written the verse, it could have written the word, v'yitoher, and he will become cleansed. And it doesn't say, and he will become cleansed, but it says he has been cleansed, which might intimate that he's in some regards always been tahor. That teaches me, that implies that tahar mipriya ofrima, that he is cleansed even initially from the primo ofriyam, the mikara, from the initial stages already. He has been considered tahar in as much as he does not need to let his hair grow and to rend his garments. So this becomes the source that Reb Shmuel Bar Yitzchok quotes from a brisa. Okay, that's because it uses the word v'taher, which could be understood to mean that he was already tahar. That teaches me that although with regards to the other laws of Tumah, they still apply to him, right? While he's still being confined, but nevertheless, with regards to two particular issues, and that is letting your hair grow and rending your garments, he's considered to be tahar, i.e. exempt from these requirements, which apply only to the Mitzvah who's a full Mitzvah.
Rabbi,
you're talking about a mukhlat?
No, we're talking about a musgar. In other words, the mukhlat is the guy who has to rip his garments and he has to let his hair grow. The question is, why doesn't that apply also to the musgar? So the answer is because in the pasuk it tells me with regards to the musgar that when the kohen comes along and he checks him and then he proclaims him to be tahar, then he goes out and he immerses his garments into the mikvah, and he has been cleansed, the taher. But if the taher can also imply that he has always been, even from the initial confinement, he's always been tahar with regard to something. What's that?
Presumption of being tahar.
Huh?
He has a presumption of being tahar.
It's not.
So
that
why does he have to? So why does he have to clean anything if he's presumed tahar?
No, that he carried that in. He goes back to being the pure that he was.
No.
No.
That I don't think that is the correct shot. I think what it's saying over here is that with regards to one particular thing, he's considered to be tahar. Okay? In other words,
Rabbi, 1 second. I'm just trying to locate the place.
yes.
I'm using this Steinzelt, so I have up here. Rava says to him, in regards to a zav, it's written in, he shall wash his clothes.
That's next.
That's
Oh,
next.
we didn't
That's
get
the
to
next
that.
part.
Okay. All right.
That's
Thank
the
you.
next part.
That's next
Thank
part.
you.
Okay. Let me explain. Let me try this again. Let me start again. We said in the Mishnah that there's no difference between the musgar, the guy who's confined, and the guy who's confirmed, except for letting your hair grow and ripping your garments. The question of the Gemara is, how do you know this? How do you know that there's a difference? So we're saying that because there's a particular way the Torah describes this person coming back to his level of purity, that tells me that with regards to at least something, he is presumed to have been tahar all along. Now, not actually, 1 second, let me finish. Not actually pure, but understand tahar as being exempt. Not that he's actually pure, but that he's exempt, which means to say he doesn't have the same severity of uncleanliness as the confirmed Mitzvah does. What does that mean? He doesn't have the same severity of Tumah as the actual Mitzvah with regards to only one aspect. And that aspect is not the actual Tumah Tahara, but only with regards to the laws that apply to the Mitzvah of letting his hair grow and ripping his garments. So not that he's actually Tahar. Not that he's actually tahar. Not that throughout that period he was actually tahar completely. Only with regards to one aspect, he's tahar. That's what we're saying, okay? So,
Rabbi, I have a problem with that.
Okay. Yep.
If the guy is musgar, meaning that the Kohen hasn't declared him and he doesn't know whether for sure he is, he stays in Becheskat Tehorah, not Becheskat Tum'ah. So therefore, what you're basically saying to me, based on what this is saying, is that, oh, the Kohen turns around and basically says, no, you're fine. So now you have to go and you have to dunk your clothing and you now become tahor. why do I have to do that if I'm tahor to begin with, since you never found anything wrong with me?
So the answer is that I think the premise you're saying is wrong. Because if you look in Rashi over here, look in the Rashi, Menohan Mili, right? Menohan Mili, from where do we know this? The ain priya of frima b'musgar, that we do not apply this letting your hair grow long and the ripping of the garments by somebody who's confined. Dilma, perhaps, this is the question of the Gemara, Dilma gali lon rachmana, maybe the Torah reveals to us, but muchlat, right, with regards to a muchlat, that he has to let his hair grow and that he has to rent his garment, v'hu adin, and that will be the same applied lemuskar to the person who is only confined, keda amrat, just like you said, in tuma, with regards to tuma, that the guy who is confined is tamei. We actually say he's tamei, even though later on it becomes declared that he's from now on tahar, right? Nevertheless, through that period of time, he's tamei, just like the Metzora. We're not saying that when he's declared tahar, right, which means to say that he comes out of confinement and now he's tahar, that he was tahar all along. We're not saying that. He was tamei until the Kohen comes along and declares him tahar. From that point forward, he becomes tahar, which means to say, let me just give you the practical implication. If you are a confined Metzora, okay, you're a confined Metzora, and you touch something, right, with Mishkav or Moshav, right, or whatever it might be, yes, that thing becomes Tomei. Now, let's say a few days later, the Kohen comes along and declares you to be Tahar. That thing does not retroactively become Tahar. That thing remains Tomei because you touched it during a period of time that you were presumed to be Tomei, and so you were Tomei. Now, are you going to be the exact same level of Tuma as the Metzora that would require you also to let your hair grow and to rip your garments? No. But that's the only difference. And as it says in the Mishnah, Ein Bain, there's no difference. But you are Tomei. Huh?
What does that require? To grow, to cut your hair and do that. What do you need to have to?
You need to have the kohen to say that you are actually a Metzora. That the appearance that's shown on your skin is a confirmed type of tzaras, and now you're a confirmed Metzora.
And okay, now let's start from the beginning very quickly.
Yeah.
The Kohen, I got something on my arm.
Yes.
Kohen looks at it and says,
I don't know.
I don't know. So now I get locked up for a week?
That's correct.
Yes. In your house.
In my house. And am I Tomei?
Yes.
Yes. That's what the rabbi is saying.
He hasn't said yes yet, that I'm Tomei. He hasn't said this yet. He says, I don't know. So I get locked up. Okay, anything I touch now, I make Tomei. Now he comes back and looks at it and says, no, it's fine. So I'm now Tahar, I go to mikveh, and I'm fine.
You have to wash your clothes, you have to go to the mikveh, and then you become Tahar.
Right. Now, if he looks at it and says, no, this one is definitely Matzaras, what happens now to me then?
Then you remain in Hesker. First of all, in both cases, you have to go out of the wall. You have to go out of the wall.
Right, I'm banished.
Right, but in the case where if it becomes confirmed that you're a Metzora, then you have to stay. You have to stay until the Metzora disappears.
Until it heals. So this could be months. It could be for years. It could be for whatever.
And however long it takes. Correct.
Okay.
Rabbi.
Yes.
I think what you're trying to say is, from the first look, he's considered Tamei.
No.
But it doesn't mean that he is. He's just considered Tamei. He's presumed Tamei. He's presumed Tamei.
He is Tamei.
He's called Tame because he's presumed Tame because it shows up later that he's not.
But when it shows up that he's not, he still needs to go to mikvah. Okay.
Yes.
He still needs to purify himself. Okay. He still needs to purify himself.
That's okay, but I'm saying he was presumed Tame. It's not known if he was or not, because now
It's not confirmed that he has tsaras, but it is confirmed that he is Tame for this time period until he comes out of the confinement. That's correct.
He was called Tame by the Kohen, because the Kohen presumed that he's Tame.
Yeah. I wish I could share the psukim over here.
So why don't you read them?
1 second.
Read them.
There you go.
There you go.
There you go.
Okay.
Wow.
Okay. So let me first do the Rambam. Okay, the Rambam, because the Rambam gives us like a very concise understanding, and then I'm gonna show the psukim. We'll see if we need it. Okay. The same applies to both a person afflicted with saras who is isolated, right? That's the confined one, and one who is definitively deemed impure. With regards to the impurity, there is no difference between a person afflicted with saras who is isolated and one who is definitively deemed impure, except covering one's head. Well, the way Rashi understands it, is that you let the hair grow, and rendering one's garment to rip one garment, shaving and bringing the birds. Okay, now one who is deemed pure after being isolated is exempt from shaving and bringing this fowl, while one who is deemed pure after having been deemed impure has these obligations. Nevertheless, with regards to impurity, they are equal in all matters. Okay, now let's keep going for a second. A person afflicted with saras, which means both of them, right? Even if it's not confirmed, right? He's just isolated, right? This person is now a primary source. He's He's a primary source of impurity. He imparts impurity to humans and implements through touching them and to earthenware containers when a portion of his body enters their inner space. Okay, you're going to see why this is important. This just 1 second. Okay, he imparts impurity to a person when carried by him and an object over which he lies and sits, even if there's a stone intervening between him and their surfaces, as is literal regarding a zav and a zava. This is derived from the pasuk, he shall launder his garments. According to the old tradition, it was taught that he becomes pure with regards to imparting impurity to the objects on which he lies or sits. All of these laws apply equally to one isolated because of saras and one deemed definitively impure. That's what's really important. Now, I want to explain something that is going to come up very shortly in the Gemara, and you need to halt cup. You need to concentrate for a minute, okay? With regards to, let me stop the share for a minute, and I'll share again in a minute, okay? With regards to the laws of how purity is imparted from one to another, right? There's mishkav or maishav, which means when I sit on something, right? Which we would call like a midras, right? When you step on something, when you sit on something, right? Then what happens is, if you're an avatuma, you pass it down. You pass it down. It doesn't matter how far down. Anything that is under you, that you're sitting on it, it becomes tummy. Fine. That's with regards to both the Metzora who's confined and the Metzora that is confirmed. Both of them convey that tumah. Now, with regards to a kli cheres has a very special halacha, and that is, if you touch it, right? If you touch it from the outside, it does not become tamei. Okay, it doesn't become tamei. It's only if you touch its inner space that it becomes tamei. Okay. Now, put that all in your memory and focus on this next idea. There's something called tumas heses. Heses means when I cause something to move. Not that I directly touch it, but I cause it to move. What does that mean? That means I could, for example, touch a stick, and the stick will touch something else and cause it to move, okay? So now, although I've touched it indirectly, right, by causing it to move with something else, that entire object that has been moved because of me becomes tameh, okay? It becomes tameh when I'm a zov. When I'm a zov, it's a very special, extra stringency that I make it tameh. Now, here's the kicker. I also make a kli cheres to become tameh in that manner when I'm a zov. But I thought you can't make something become tameh unless you touch it from the inside, unless you're in the airspace of that particular object. Yes, that's all true, except for one case, and that's the case of a zav. When a zav comes along and through hefes, through moving, right, he causes this thing to move, an earthenware vessel to move indirectly, right? So that earthenware vessel becomes tameh, even though he didn't enter its airspace. He still makes it tameh. Okay. Does everybody understand those different halachas?
If a zav walks into a winery,
Yes.
there are barrels of wine sitting over there. If he pushes one, everything inside it, and it moves, everything inside it is tameh.
That's correct. Now, we have a similar halacha, not exactly the same, but a similar halacha with regards to a mitzorah. With regards to mitzorah, it says that if he enters a house, everything in the house becomes tameh. Okay? And that's going to include a kli cheres. He hasn't actually gone into the airspace. It doesn't matter. Okay? That applies equally. And now you're going to see why Rava turns around now and he wants to negate the teaching of Reb Shmuel bar Yitzchok, who says that from the word v'toher, you can come along and learn that there's going to be a difference between a musgar and a muchlat, right? With regards to growing your hair and rending the garments, because it's not so clear. Yes.
Okay. You just said that if I guess a mitzvah walks into a house, everything becomes tameh.
Correct.
Including the kli cheres.
Yes.
Correct.
And
Okay.
everything inside it.
Okay. So then the only way that I can understand that based upon your stick analogy is the fact that when he walks into the house, he moves air and the air touches the kli cheres.
Well, I used heses because that's what the Gemara is going to come along and quote with regards to a zav, to try and apply the same principle with regards to a mitzorah, because there's one additional piece to the puzzle. Okay, everybody put everything on the side for a minute, hold on to it, and listen to this principle. Okay, with regards to a zav, okay, a zav has to wait 7 days and then go to the mikvah. But when does he go to the mikvah? He doesn't go to the mikvah at night, at the end. He can go to the mikvah during the day. Okay? So now when he goes to the mikvah during the day, on some level, he becomes tahor. Okay? To a degree, he becomes tahor. Now, this is still conditional, because if
he has to wait until the sun goes down.
But in addition to that, if he has a discharge after he went to the mikvah, it negates his whole counting and he has to start counting again. But the question becomes, if you're still following, the question becomes, what happens to anything he touched between the time he went to the mikvah and the time that he had the discharge? Does that retroactively become tahor? excuse me, tummy, does that retroactively become tummy? So we say that the answer is, with regards to everything, yes, it does, except for one thing. And that one thing is Hesses, that the earthenware keli that he touched indirectly in the period of time between when he went into the mikvah and the time that he had the discharge, we will say that although everything else becomes negated and retroactively he is still tamei, right? But with regards to the hesses, if he indirectly touched a kli cheres, right, during that period of time between the mikvah and having that discharge, that will not retroactively go back to become tamei. Okay? Why is that important? Because remember, I'm doing this a little bit out of order because we should be going slowly, bit by bit, through everything. But I think that having this an understanding of all the pieces before we actually do the Gemara is going to help us do the Gemara inside, and it's going to flow. But ultimately, what have we been trying to do? We've been trying to analyze, right, the word v'taher. Instead of v'yitar, right, it's v'taher, and he became cleansed. He has been cleansed, right? And we're trying to say that the word v'taher comes along and teaches me that there's, in some aspect, he has retroactively been considered tahor in some aspect. So with regards to what Reb Shmuel Bar Yitzchok was trying to teach us is, with regards to letting your hair grow and rending your garments, you have retroactively been considered tahor, and therefore you do not rend your garments and let your hair grow. But with regards to everything else, right, you still have been considered to be tamei all the way through. Okay, all the way through. Comes along Rava now. Yeah, let's do it inside.
Can I say something?
Yeah, sure.
So maybe I'm getting that the minute you go into the confinement,
yes,
whether you tahor or tamei, you become tamei.
You become,
because you are confined with tamei people.
Yeah.
Not because you've become confined with tamei people, but because you have been confined. That's why you are tamei. The Torah says you're tamei.
Yeah, but I'm getting it because he's in that area. Anybody touches anything, and you are tamei.
No. A mitzvah has to be separate, not just from people who are tahor. He cannot be even together with another mitzvah. He has to be isolated on his own, completely on his own.
Or there is not a gathering of people.
No.
Okay.
No, although there's a story that we read in one of the Haftarahs about the 4 lepers, but that's a separate story. We're not going to get into that, right?
Okay.
What were they doing together? They shouldn't have been together. Anyway, but the point is, generally,
the one that went to the camp and
that's right.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
Right. But anyway, okay. So let me, if you don't mind, if you bear with me, let's start again from Menah Hanimili and let's just go through, okay? Frank the Gemara, from Menah Hanimili, from where do we know these things? In other words, from where do we see in the Torah that the requirements to let your hair grow and to rip your garments do not apply to the mitzvah that has only been confined? Tana, it was taught in the Brisa, the Tana of Shmuel Bar Yitzchok. Shmuel Bar Yitzchok taught this Brisa, coming to Rav Huna in front of Rav Huna, that says like this. It says in the pasuk with regards to the confined mitzvah, that the Kohen proclaimed him to be tahor. Mispachasu is only a mispachas. In other words, it was just a stain of sorts, but it's not actually taraz. So what does he have to do? Like a scab, yeah. The chibes begodov and he will immerse his garments v'toher, and he has been cleansed. And so this implies that what? Tahor, he is cleansed. Mipriya or frima demiikara, that he's been cleansed from letting his hair grow and rendering, even from the initial confinement. In other words, that's never applied to him. That's what he wants to learn from this word v'toher. Amalei Rava. So Rava says, responds to him and rejects this. Ela me'ata. If that's the case, that the word v'taher implies initial cleanliness, that there's within regards to something he's been clean, then we have a question with regards to zav. Gabe Zov, with regards to Zov, the Chsiv that it says, V'chibes, V'godov, V'toher. Then with regards to Zov, where it says, and he shall immerse his garments, and then it says he will immerse his flesh in the Mayim Chayim, and he has been cleansed. And over there we're talking about not a Zov from one discharge or two discharges. We're talking about a full-fledged Zov. That's the context of the pasuk. A full-fledged Zov, which means that all the Tumah has been applied to this guy. And the pasuk, nevertheless, at the conclusion of his purification, where he goes into the mikveh, etc., it says the same word, v'toher. And you're coming along and saying v'toher means he has been cleansed, that there's some kind of presumption of cleanliness all the way through. What is that going to be? What are you talking about? So Hasam, my v'toher me'ikara ika. What kind of initially being cleansed is it possible to say in that case? So therefore, what are you telling me that v'toher would imply some kind of retroactive clarification that he's always been tahar with regards to one aspect, where with the zav that could never be applied. So therefore, Rava comes along and explains the v'toher to teach me something else, right? V'toher teaches me as follows: Elo tar hashta militame kli cheres beheses. So rather, you have to explain that this expression that he has been cleansed within the context of the zav to mean that he is cleansed here on in, right, from the stringency of conveying tumah to an earthenware utensil through movement, right? Which means that which means as follows, as I explained before, right? The guy who is a zav, on the seventh day he can go to the mikvah, and we say that although he's gone to the mikvah, he has become cleansed. Right? What is that telling me? That he's being cleansed? That Afal Gab, even though the Hader Chazeh, he then sees another discharge, right? On the seventh day after his immersion, will say, V'toher comes to teach me that Loi Mitame Milamafreya, he still does not convey Tumah to it retroactively through Heses, okay? Through Heses, through the moving of it, which means it's to say as follows. Rava is coming along and saying, let's look at an isolated halacha with regards to Zav, where we use the drasha of v'toher to teach me an important lesson. What is that lesson? The lesson of using the word v'toher instead of v'yitar is to teach me that if the guy goes to mikvah on the seventh day, and then afterwards, after going to the mikvah, he touches something through heses, through movement. He calls it something to move, right? And obviously, he would not be conveying any tumah to that because he's already been to mikvah. But then he goes and he has another discharge, which now retroactively shows me that that all along he's been tameh. Right? So since the pasuk says v'toher, it teaches me that with regards to one aspect, right, we're not going to retroactively consider this to be tamei, and that's only with regards to the heses movement and causing something else to move. That's not going to be that this earthenware vessel is not going to be considered retroactively to be tamei. Says Rava. This is in response to Rav Shmuel by Yitzchok. He says, Hachanami, so too in the case of the confined Mitzayra, when it says v'toher, what is the word v'toher going to teach me? The word v'toher is going to teach me tahar hashta milimitame bevia lemafreya. He's cleansed from this point on, from when the Kohen says that he's tahar, right? He's cleansed from this point on, from the stringency of conveying tumah retroactively through entering a house, which means to say as follows. The scenario is like this. A guy comes to the kohen and he looks at it and he says, I'm not sure, go and close yourself off. He closes himself off and he comes back to the kohen, and the kohen comes to him and the kohen says, okay, Nothing's grown. There's no further signs that this is tamei. Therefore, I declare you tahar. Then he goes out and he goes to the mikvah. He becomes tahar. Mazel tov, murder. But then, sometime later, let's say 2 white hairs grow out of that space. Now, those 2 white hairs growing out of that space now makes it that he's actually been tamei all along. He's been a Metzora all along. That's what we're saying, that you're a Metzora all along. And everything that you've touched retroactively, right? Everything you've touched or come into contact or gone into the house, and you've made tamei, right? So we're saying, right, that with regards to the word vitar, tells me that you do not convey the tuma retroactively through the bia, the coming into the house retroactively, which means to say as follows: since we have a certain stringency, with regards to Metzora that you don't find anywhere else really, that when a Metzora comes into a house, then any people, food, or kalim that are in the house become tamei, right? We'll say that the word v'taher teaches me that would not happen we would not say with regards to the tamei that he conveys through entering into a house, retroactively makes everything else tamei. However, with regards to other tumas that he conveys, right, we would say that retroactively they all become tamei. So let's say mishkav or moishav, right? If the Metzora sat on anything between the time that he's gone to the mikvah, that the kohen has made him tar, and he's gone to the mikvah, and then he sits on things here, there, and everywhere, all of those things retroactively become tamei if 2 white hairs grow out at a later stage, and then the kohen has to come along and say that retroactively he's been tamei. However, because it says the word v'taher, it teaches me that in one aspect, and that is with regards to the tumah that he conveys by entering a house, that would not be applied retroactively to any house that he's been in between the period of time that he's gone to the mikvah and the time that these 2 white hairs grew. If that makes sense.
Yeah, but now I see a difference that maybe I made a mistake before. So you go out of the wall, you have to be closed off, be out of the wall only when you're a Metzora. The Zav can stay in his house.
Yes, but Zav and Metzora are not connected in that way. We're using it to say that just like the word v'taher with regards to a Zav is coming to teach us a specific law, right? So to v'taher we could use to teach us a specific law. But we're not
okay, but they were not under the same conditions. One
correct.
was at home and one was out the wall.
That's correct. They're not under the same conditions.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Is everybody still with me?
Rabbi,
Yes.
Hes's movement, I'm still a bit confused about it. It's when the person who's tuma goes into a room and there's movement through not touching an object. Is this correct? I mean that it's movement through.
No. A hesis means that I cause something else to move indirectly. That's not what we're speaking about with regards to Metzora. That's what we're speaking about with regards to a Zav. Okay? Now, the Hesed that we're talking about with a Zav is a special category, right? That applies only with regards to a Zav and a Klicheres. Okay? That's a unique halacha that only applies to a Zav. There's no other case where through Heses, one person who has Tumah can cause the inside of an earthenware vessel to become Tamei, right? So that is a special law with regards to Zav. We're saying, let's compare the special law of conveying Tumah to a Kli Cheres by entering into the house, not Hesed, but by entering into a house with regards to Mitzayra to the laws of the Zav and the Hesed, right? So that we're saying that when we come along and we proclaim the Zav retroactively to be Tameh because he had a further discharge, we won't apply that to the Hesed movement and the Kli Cheres, right? So too, with regards to the Mitzayra, when we retroactively declare him to be a Mitzayra, we won't retroactively apply that to the Tumah that he conveys by entering into a house. That's what we're saying. Okay? Although, with regards to the other aspects of conveying Tumah, for example, in both cases, with a Mishkav or Maishav, in those cases, we will apply this retroactive application of Tumah to all the things he sat on. Okay? Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so now, so says the Gemara, therefore, because Rava has shown how the source that was cited by Rav Shmuel, by Yitzchok, is no longer acceptable, because the term v'toher does not refer to initial cleanliness, but as Rava showed that it's only talking about after going to the mikvah, henceforth, moving forward between the period that he's gone to the mikvah, between the period that he's become cleansed, and the subsequent unfortunate discovery that didn't count, right? So the toher is moving forward, not in other words, moving forward from the time where he has become, from the time he becomes tahar. So therefore, the toher cannot be understood as initially from the beginning of his confinement, and therefore you can't use the word v'toher to teach me that from day one, right, we apply to the confined Mitzayra not to have to cut his hair and not to have to let his hair grow and to rip the garments. Therefore, we're back to square one. Give me a verse that teaches me that only the confirmed Messiah has to rip his garments and let his hair grow, and not the confined one. Okay? It was a little bit of a long route to get to the point that Rava is saying we still need a verse to teach me the difference between the confirmed Mitzayra and the confined Mitzayra with regards to these special laws of letting your hair grow and ripping your garments. Elo Amar Rava. So that's why Rava comes along and says, Mehacha, we're going to learn that it's only with regards to the confirmed Mitzayra that he has to let his hair grow and not the confined one. Why? Because it says as follows. V'hatzarua asher boy hanega. Hatzarua is the one who has been afflicted with tzaras. Asher boy hanega. The words that we're going to focus on, asher boy, that in whom there is. So it says with regards to only that person, his garments shall be torn, and his hair shall be not cut, should be allowed to grow. So what does it tell me, Asher Boy? Asher Boy Hanoga teaches me that it's only the Mitzayra who, the actual Mitzayra, who his hair has to grow. Mishet Tzaratoi Teluya Begufoi. It's only one whose state of tzaras is contingent upon his body, right? Meaning to say, when I come along and I say that you are considered tameh and you're considered a Mitzayra, why am I saying that? I'm saying that because you actually have an affliction that is actually tzaras in your body, right? But since it says Asher Boy Hanega, it comes to include Yotzozeh She'ein Tzarata Teluya Begufoy Ela B'Yamim. It includes the confined Mitzayra, whose state of tzaras is not contingent on his body, but rather upon the days of his confinement. Because at the end of the week, once the Kohen comes back and declares that he's tahar, we will see that that it wasn't dependent on his body, but rather the days of the 7 days passing, at the end of the 7 days passing, that's what no longer makes him a tzaras, because he doesn't have he doesn't have the tsaras affliction. In other words, with regards to the confirmed Mitzorah, the reason why he is a Mitzorah is because he actually has tsaras on his body, right? With regards to the confined one, the reason why he's called a Mitzorah is not because he has tsaras on his body, because ultimately it's going to become clear that it's not tsaras. So then why is he still considered to be a Mitzorah? Because he has a couple of days to wait till the end of the week. Torah says you're going to be a Mitzorah until the end of the week. And so this is what Rava wants to say is the source to make a distinction between between the actual Mitzorah and the guy who is confined, because in the context of the pasuk, which talks about tearing your garments and letting your hair grow, it says the Tzarua Asher Boy Hanoga, which excludes the Tzara who is just waiting for the Kohen to come at the end to declare that it wasn't actually Tzaras. Everybody understand? All right. I'm assuming that if it's quiet, everybody understands. Okay. That's the Gemara. Amalei Abaya. So Abaya says to him, Elam Ata, if you're going to say Asher Boy, in whom, right, applies only to a confirmed Mitzorah, then 1 second, there's another verse later on, right? The verse later on says, Kol Yemei Asher Hanegam Boy Yitma. All the days that the Tzaras affliction is in him, Asher Boy, Asher Hanegam Boy, yeah, she shall be tamei. And what does it say with regards to that? That his dwelling should be outside the camp and so on, and etc. What are you going to come along? If you apply the same limud over here, you're going to say Asher Boy, right? Means only the one who has it in his body. Only one whose state of tzaras is contingent upon his body, meaning the confirmed tzara. Only he's going to be sent out of the walls. But the guy whose state of tzaras is not contingent on his body, but it's only in days. And so therefore we're talking about the confined tzara that ain't ton shiluach. He's not going to be required to be sent out of the city walls. Now, and if you're going to say Einach that's taka the case, and we should apply this limud, and therefore we should apply that difference between the Mitzorah, the actual Mitzorah, and the confined Mitzorah, that he doesn't have to go out of the walls, etc. That you can't say that because it was already taught differently in our Mishnah. That what does it say in our Mishnah? Ein bein Mitzorah muskal Mitzorah muchlat. There's no difference between a confined Mitzorah and a confirmed Mitzorah. Ela priya frima, except for letting his hair grow and rending his garments. But with regards to sending the Mitzorah outside of the walls, and also with regards to conveying Tumah to objects through entering a house, both of them are equal. And so therefore, Abaya is asking on Rava's limud that when you're saying V'hatzarua asher boy hanega, and you're saying it only applies to the confirmed Mitzorah, not the confined Mitzorah, then later on when it says that all the days that he has the affliction in him, right, then he should be outside the city and so on and so forth, right, should only apply to the Mitzorah and not apply to the one who's being confined. And you can't say that because our Mishnah says that that's not the case. So what he's trying to do is undo the limud that Rav was trying to present over here with the Asher Boy. Because if you're not going to apply it in both, don't apply it to any of them. And for the Gemara, Amalei, Rav responds to him like this. If you look at that pasuk, the one that you're asking on, it says, Yemei, Kol Yemei. What does that mean? It means when it says, Kol Yemei Asher HaNega Boy Yitma, all the days that he has the nega in him, right? Then he should be, then he'll be tamei and he'll have to be outside of the walls, right? It could have said it, Yemei Asher, it could have said Yemei Asher HaNega Boy, the days in which he has the affliction, in which case, right? The term Asher Boy would rightly apply, and you would make a distinction between the Mitzorah and the confined person, right? Not the confirmed person, but meaning between the confined and the confirmed. But because the pasuk comes along and adds a word, which is kol yemei comes to include somebody who might otherwise not have been included in the verse. And who is that? He comes to include l'rabas mitzayra muska l'shiluach. It's the word kol is included. It is done to include a confined mitzayra that he also has the laws of being sent out of the walled cities, etc., applied to him. Okay, so far, so good. Yes? So, Rava gave a good answer. That you're right. Asher boy should only apply to the Mitzorah, but because it says kol, it came to include the confined one, and therefore I can still use my drasha of V'hatzarua asher boy hanaga. It makes the distinction between the confirmed Mitzorah and the confined Mitzorah, that only the confirmed Mitzorah has to let his hair grow and has to rip his garments. Right? The Gemara, if so, meaning, if you're going to say that a confined Mitzorah is included in all the laws of the Mitzorah, unless what? Unless you're going to have an extra word, right? That's going to make an extra word is going to exclude him, right? So then tiglachas v'tziporim my timer loy. So then why at the end of our Mishnah, when we talk about the tahara process, the process of him becoming tahar, why do you not apply it equally to both the Mitzorah and the one who's just confined? And how do we know that that's the case? Because Tiktani, we said in the end of our Mishnah, there's no difference between somebody who's tar as a result of being confined and somebody who's being from being confirmed, except for the requirement to shave the hair and the bird procedure of offering those up. But the question is, why don't they apply to a confinement Torah if you don't have a special verse to exclude the confinement Torah? In other words, you're telling me that the only reason why the confined Mitzorah doesn't have to let his hair grow is because we have a special limit that says Asher Boy, right? And Asher Boy tells me that that's the reason why only the confirmed Mitzorah has to do it and not the other Mitzorah, the confined Mitzorah. So then why do we not find any special limit to teach me that he doesn't have to bring up the birds and he doesn't have to shave? There's no pasuk that clearly says that this only refers to the confirmed Mitzorah and not to the confined Mitzorah. And for the Gemara, Abaya answers, and he says, the verse regarding the requirements where the pasuk talks about bringing up the birds, it says, "V'yotza hakoyin el mechutz lamachne." The kohen shall go forth outside the camp. V'hine nirpa nega hatzaras, and behold, the tzaras affliction has been healed. From the word nirpa nega hatzaras, that is become healed, it's teaching me a special limud. Miche tzaratoi tluya b'refuos. It's only the one whose state of tzaras is contingent upon healing. In other words, he's been confirmed with tzaras, and he needs to be healed from that tzaras, and he's the one that has to bring these birds, and has to have his hair has to have all his hair shaved. Yotza zeh, that comes to exclude the one she'ain tzarate teluy b'refuos ela b'refuos, that his tzaras is not contingent on being healed from it, but rather the days of being confined, the week, because at the end of the week it's going to be shown how he doesn't have tzaras. Okay, does that make sense? Does everybody understand how we concluded that the proof from Rava remains a good proof, and all the questions that you wanted to ask on it? Number one, the question about what about Asher Boy with regards to the other pasuk, and we said that there's an extra limit to include the Mitzorah that is musgar, that is confined, because it says kol, and that includes him. And then the second question that we had with regards to why do we make a distinction between between the confined and the confirmed with regards to the procedure at the end, we say because there is actually an extra limud, and that is where it says in the pasuk with regards to the kohen going outside of the machne, it says nirpa negatzaras, that it was healed. That teaches me that it only applies to the one who had saras that needs to be healed, and not to the one whose saras just needed to wait till the end of the week, and then he would be proclaimed to be tahar.
Rabbi,
Yes,
you're stretching my brain.
I would say I'm sorry, but I'm not. It's a good thing. It's a good thing to keep the machine moving, because the more you keep it moving, the more efficient it becomes. So Baruch Hashem. But after this, it gets easier. Okay, it gets easier. We move on to easier Gemara. We're going to come to the story of the translation of the Chumash. It's a geschmack piece of Gemara that's coming next. Be'ezus Hashem. Anyway, I wish you all a wonderful day. Hatzlacha, Rabbi, and everything.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank
Have a
you.
good day, everybody.
Okay.